Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a book called Glories of Belief.
Right. It's by Abul Fariq Wasti. The original title, I think, was Anwar-ul-Eiqan.
And this is basically, well, his response to atheism, wasn't it? Looking at the human self, the Quran,
Hmm.
trying to square things, maybe.
Exactly. Our mission here is really to unpack his arguments for you, understand what he was trying to achieve with this text.
Okay, so source is primarily the book itself, yeah. Prologue, contents, gives us the setup.
Definitely. And you see right away Wasti's concerns. He wasn't just writing in a vacuum.
No, he seems worried. Worried about, like, atheistic propaganda spreading.
That and also divisions he saw, within the Muslim community itself. He felt maybe some religious leaders weren't equipped.
Weren't giving convincing answers to the challenges people were raising against Islam.
Precisely. And he lists some of those challenges quite specifically.
Yeah, I saw that. Things like the Quran mentioning seven skies, layer on layer. How does that fit with, well, space as we know it?
Big one. And also the idea of God sitting on the Empyrean, the throne. How do you reconcile that with, cosmology?
These sound like common objections, even today.
They are. He also mentions comparisons people were making, like the story of Jacob and Joseph sensing each other, comparing that to modern ideas like telepathy.
Interesting angle. And specific incidents from the Prophet Muhammad's life, peace be upon him.
Yes, things critics were questioning. Also, those verses about hearts being sealed, what does that mean for belief, for punishment? Is it fair?
Heavy stuff. And even Satan getting into heaven, that story too.
These are clearly the sticking points he wanted to address head on.
Okay, so quite a list. How does he structure the counter-argument in the book? You mentioned 5 chapters.
Yeah, 5 parts. First up, he looks at what he calls explicit verses. Mukamat, I think is the term.
Explicit, so the ones with clear, direct meanings.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He digs into their nature, how our self-understanding shapes how we even read those clear verses.
Okay, then chapter 2 gets into implicit verses.
Mutashabihat. This sounds more interpretive.
It is. Wasti argues some things, like feelings, deeper realities, they can't always be nailed down with just words.
So the prophet's role was partly to guide us towards understanding these less obvious truths.
That's his idea. And he even brings up subtle forms of polytheism here. Imperceptible polytheism, he calls it. Tricky concepts.
Wow, okay. Chapter 3 then pivots to perception, how we grasp abstract ideas.
Yeah, like belief itself.
Yeah.
Different levels of certainty, your inner state, spiritual stages.
And he tackles atheist arguments against things like hell within this chapter too.
Seems so, framing it within this idea of inner perception and conviction.
Then chapter 4, Nur, or divine light. Sounds quite mystical.
It leans that way. He interprets Quranic verses about light, connects it to creation, heavens, earth, solar system.
Wait, he brings in modern physics here.
Apparently so. He talks about light, the universe's origins, referencing modern physics, alongside a sermon by Hazrat Ali. Quite a mix, trying to bridge that gap. And the final chapter, contrivance.
Yes. Tadbir, human versus divine contrivance or planning. He looks at its meaning in the Quran.
Contrasting our plans with God's will, kind of.
Exactly. And analyzing actions of prophets, Adam, Noah, Abraham, others, addressing criticisms against their stories specifically.
So pulling it all together then, his main aim is pretty clear. Build a solid case against atheism, using Islamic texts, but also reason.
Absolutely. It's an attempt to provide reasoned arguments, tackle specific criticisms, and explore belief and the self, but not just relying on tradition alone. He's trying to engage with scientific ideas, too.
Like his reinterpretation of the seven skies, possibly orbits in the solar system. That's quite a modern take.
It is. And suggesting God on the Empyrean could be metaphorical, maybe God's presence in believers' hearts. It's definitely an effort to reconcile.
It really shows one way tradition and reason might interact when facing these huge questions about existence and belief.
For sure. Wasti seems to be saying, look, understanding these texts isn't just about the surface meaning. You need to explore the implicit, the hidden layers, and see how they connect to everything else we know.
So for you listening, Glories of Belief offers this particular path through skepticism. It's saying, hey, there are thoughtful responses within faith traditions if you dig deep.
Yeah, it prompts you to think about that interplay between the explicit and the implicit in faith. How does that shape your own view?
And maybe it leaves you wondering, what other ways could these ancient narratives be understood if we look at them through fresh eyes today?